Hello, and welcome to part 2 of Policy Day with CalOSBA. We hope you enjoyed part 1. And in this segment, we're going to deep dive into questions around how to increase equity and economic mobility and talk about some historic measures passed to protect pay equity and support women. This segment also features a fireside chat with Assemblymember Cottie Petrie-Norris. Let's get started. In this segment, we're going to be talking about a topic that gets me out of bed every day, determined to work as hard as I can for the state of California and Governor Gavin Newsom. We're talking about the vision, the goal of a California for all, a state where the body or the zip code you're born into is not the biggest determinant of your ability to participate in an economic life or to chart your own path to success. I'm here today with someone who I know feels the same passion and motivation I do for that dream, Assemblymember Cottie Petrie-Norris. The Assemblymember has represented California's 73rd Assembly District, the cities of Costa Mesa, Irvine, and Tustin since 2018. She refers to herself as a businesswoman, mom, and community leader in that order. She has secured millions of dollars in funding for projects across Orange County, and she is known as one of the most vocal and prolific defenders of small businesses in Sacramento. As she's been named Legislator of the Year by the California Life Sciences Association, the California Family Business Association, and the California PACE Association. She also chairs some very important committees. She serves as chair of the Assembly's Accountability and Administrative Review Committee and the Select Committee on Small Business and Entrepreneurship. So before we talk about anything else, I want to say that you really do stand out as a strong advocate in the legislature for small business. And I thank you, Assemblymember, for your passion.
Well, thank you so much, Director Gray. I really, really appreciate that, especially from someone like you, who I know is such a staunch and passionate defender and supporter for California small business. So it's a pleasure to be part of this conversation with you today.
Looking forward to it. I just want to recap really quickly. GoBiz Director Dee Dee Myers talked in part 1 about why small businesses are so important economically, but want to ask about your personal motivation here. Why are small businesses so central in your policy agenda every year?
Well, Director Gray, we all recognize that California's small businesses are absolutely the heart and soul of California's thriving and vibrant economy. But it's more than that, because our small businesses are also in so many parts of the state. They are the heart and soul of our communities as well. And I think we really saw that in such a profound way in the earliest days, but really throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. And so for me, small business had always been a top priority. When we 3 years ago had to effectively shut down the state and shut down so many small businesses in order to combat the COVID-19 pandemic, that priority for me just really, really amplified. So my top priority over the course of the last 3 years really was to stabilize and support our small business, to enable them to weather the incredibly difficult and devastating period of the COVID-19 crisis and position our small business community to thrive as we emerge from that pandemic. And so that is why I was a real champion in the early days of the COVID-19 crisis for funding and state support to ensure that our small businesses were able to keep their doors open and keep their employees working. And we were able, the legislature and the governor, we were able to deliver the COVID-19 Small Business Relief Grant Program, which ended up delivering $5.4 billion to small businesses all across the state. And that really was an absolutely critical lifeline. So while we know many challenges remain, really proud that we were able to do that work in partnership with the governor, with you and with your team, and believe that our small businesses are really positioned for success as we move forward.
Thank you for that. I too feel that our small businesses really are community institutions. And I often say they're the place where young people learn and get their first job. And they're often places where returning citizens get second chances. So the silver lining in the pandemic really is the attention that we are now paying to small businesses and the support that they've gotten, as you just said, is historic. So you and your fellow legislators and the governor are to be commended for that dedication and recognition of their importance just across the board. So let's talk for a moment. How do you see the tie between economic mobility and entrepreneurship? And why is that important?
Well, for so many Californians, opening your own business, becoming an entrepreneur has really been a window into a different and better world for an individual, for their family, and as I said, really for entire communities. And I really think that our small business owners are the absolute personification of the California dream. And I have just so much respect for the tenacity, the drive, the passion, the creativity that our small business owners and entrepreneurs across this state bring to bear on the work that they do each and every day. And that was why last session I was really privileged to chair the Assembly Select Committee on Small Business and Entrepreneurship. And that gave us an opportunity to go up and down the state talking to small business owners about the challenges and opportunities that they are confronting right now and the priorities that they want to see us advancing as policymakers in the state. And we were able to bring together policymakers, advocates, and small business owners themselves, really to tell those stories. And I think to really focus myself and my colleagues on what small businesses need from us and how we can help them continue to build a vibrant and thriving California.
Yes. I know that you're already very busy cooking up new policy ideas for this year's legislative cycle. But this series is about education for partners and business associations about new important policy that takes effect this year, 2023. So I want to just ask you to think back all the way back to the last legislative cycle and talk about new laws that came out. Can you share what you think were the most important milestones for small businesses? Things that, you think will change the landscape in terms of disparities and opportunities and outcomes in our economy?
There are a couple things that I would highlight. So number one, and I talked about this a little bit, I think that some of the most meaningful work that we've done over the last legislative cycle was really done in the budget. And as we often say, our budgets are really a statement of our values. And sometimes it doesn't seem like we're putting our money where our mouth is, but I have to say, with the $5.4 billion that we invested in California small business over the course of the last two budget cycles, I think we really did put our money where our mouth is and ensure that the investments that we're making as a state reflect the values that we have as California and the values that we have when we think about how we want to grow California's economy. I think another really big thing that is coming down the pipe, and I know that you and your team are working so closely on, is the rollout of SSBCI 2.0. So that is going to put $1.2 billion on the table for California small businesses. And I think that is going to be another really historic opportunity. And I think our focus really needs to be on ensuring that the rollout of those dollars is effective, that our small businesses know about the money that's available, know about the opportunities that are available, that our network of partners across the state are poised and prepared to roll those dollars out effectively. And then, of course, on the legislative side, the big bill that we were able to pass last year was AB 2019. And that's my bill that will codify the state's 25% small business procurement goal. And was really proud of the work we were able to do on that and really excited to see that become reality and come to fruition this year as well.
All righty now, you're straight in my lane. Assembly Bill 2019. Wow, what a significant accomplishment. And you are indeed helping the state do the good work this year, Assemblymember. Tell me, what inspired you to introduce Assembly Bill 2019? The law does a number of things, including, for example, requiring small business liaisons to provide an economic equity plan for their agencies and requiring that a disparity study be completed. Is there one thing in particular that you're most excited about?
Well, there is. So the state's 25% small business procurement goal has actually been in place since 2006, when it was established as part of an executive order under Governor Schwarzenegger. But the reality is that the implementation towards that goal has been uneven. And there are departments and agencies that have really stepped up to make that happen. And there's others that haven't. And I know in my introduction, you highlighted the fact that I chaired the Assembly's Committee on Accountability and Administrative Review. And really in that capacity, one of my number one priorities in this area and just really across the board is on oversight and implementation. Because I think sometimes as legislators, as policymakers, we write a lot of laws, have a bunch of press, we'll have the big press conference, and then we don't do a good enough job of ensuring, did that get implemented? Did the money go where it's supposed to go? Are those resources having the impact that we want them to have? So I feel like that kind of accountability is always my North Star. And so that's really the part of this bill that I am most excited about. It's a bill that both sets a goal, but also sets a framework and sets up parameters to ensure that all of our agencies are actually delivering on that goal and delivering for our small business owners so that we can support them and help them as they continue to create economic growth and mobility.
Yes. So let's talk behind the scenes a little bit. Assembly Bill 2019 received a tremendous amount of support in both houses. What did you hear from your colleagues about this issue as your bill was moving through the process? And who were some of your best partners along the way?
Director Gray, as you know, effective policymaking is a team sport. And we had an absolutely phenomenal team that were part of shaping this legislation and a huge part of ensuring that we got over the finish line. So our three key sponsors on this bill were the Cal Asian Chamber of Commerce, the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and the California's Black Chamber of Commerce, who we could not have asked for better partners. And they worked so hard on this bill. And I'll tell you, this was not the first time that some of the elements of this policy were attempted. So for several years, various colleagues had tried kind of elements of this bill and tried to codify the 25% procurement goal. And we weren't able to get it over the finish line. And I think in part it's because it wasn't a top priority either for the legislators or for some of the partners. And so this year, I made it really clear with my colleagues. I made it really clear as we were moving through the process, particularly as we were trying to move the bill through the appropriations hurdles in our fiscal committees, that this was my top priority, and our partners did the same. And so I think that was really, really vital to ensuring the success of this policy. And like I said, we had just incredible support across the legislature throughout the process. And I think that really is a testament just to how vital small business is and how important our local small businesses are for my colleagues up and down the state. And this is an opportunity, like I said, where we're not just paying lip service to that fact, but we are putting our money where our mouth is and using the power of California's state contracting dollars to help open up windows of opportunity for our smallest businesses.
Yes. As a strong advocate for small business during your time in Sacramento, tell me, Assemblymember, what excites you about the days and work ahead?
Director Gray, I am excited about a couple things as we look forward. And I've mentioned a couple of them already, but it really is, for me, this year is about making sure that AB 2019 comes to fruition, and that all of the exciting things that we know are possible with this bill and are possible with this policy come to life. And that's about implementation and rollout. And you and your team are just playing such an absolutely vital role in ensuring the success of that policy. And so I just cannot thank you enough. You bring such a genuine passion for small business and such an incredible leadership style in the way that you are able to galvanize folks around you, in your agency, in your department, and across the state to actually make the promise of good things a reality. So I'm very excited about that. I mentioned how excited I am about the rollout of SSBCI 2.0. And I'll say kind of bigger picture, the other thing that I am really excited about and committed to is continuing to do the work with my colleagues to ensure that we elevate the voice of small businesses in our policymaking and elevate the voice of small business here in the Capitol. And I know I've shared with you, I have said to our local small business groups, I've said to small business organizations, small and large business organizations all across the state, I think it's really vital because sometimes it seems like the voice of our smallest businesses are missing when we're making policy choices. And I get it. When you're a small business owner, you are busy keeping the lights on, paying your employees, figuring out how you're going to continue to innovate and get creative as you're facing such a myriad of challenges. But we need to ensure that both as policymakers and I think as statewide advocates, that we really up our game and ensure that we are elevating the voices of small business so that their voices are a bigger and bigger part about the policy choices and the decisions that we're making here in Sacramento. And so excited about continuing that work and excited to continue to work with you and your team to make sure that we're doing everything we can to support California's thriving small business community.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Assemblymember Cottie Petrie-Norris, for those words. I cannot tell you how much it means to me to have our relationship and to be pulling for the same things. You know, when it comes to small business, they're counting on us.
100%.
So elevating those voices, that's where it's at. So thank you so much again. Up in this next segment, Assembly Member, I'm going to be doing a deep dive into the implementation questions around AB 2019 with Angela Schell, the State Chief Procurement Officer and Deputy Director of Procurement Division for the California Department of General Services. And I want to just finally, one last time, I know thank you's not enough, but it's all I have. So thank you again for making the time to be with us today and for our viewers. This has been a great conversation about a great piece of legislation and a phenomenal small business advocate.
Well, thank you, Director Gray. So grateful for your partnership, your leadership, and for bringing me into this conversation, and look forward to watching that segment ahead. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Assemblymember Petrie-Norris, for exploring how you think about the shared priority of increasing equity and economic mobility. Now we're going to deep dive into a single piece of legislation, Assembly Bill 2019, authored by Assemblymember Petrie-Norris and Assemblymember Holden, and signed by Governor Newsom at the end of September 2022. It really exemplifies how the state can use policy to drive social change, in this case, increasing economic mobility. To explore this, I'm going to be talking with Angela Schell, Chief Procurement Officer and Deputy Director of the Procurement Division for the California Department of General Services. This new law gives our offices, CalOSBA and the Department of General Services, distinct and complementary roles in implementing Assembly Bill 2019 this year. And before we jump in, I'm going to give a very high-level description of its objectives and requirements. First, this is an expansion of existing policy. Current law requires that every state agency that significantly regulates or impacts small business has to designate at least one person to serve as a small business liaison for the agency. These small business liaisons are responsible for receiving and responding to complaints from small businesses and assisting in helping its office meet or exceed the goal of 25% small business participation. Assembly Bill 2019 first requires that each of those small business liaisons develop an economic equity first action plan for the office, department, or agency that they represent. These action plans are intended to provide direction, recommendations, and strategies as to how to ensure that small businesses, including enterprises owned by women, minorities, and members of the LGBTQ community, are effectively involved and can benefit from that agency's procurement process. This bill is going to expand the reporting that my office is already required to do about small business liaisons, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. Let me introduce Angela Schell, the brave person responsible for overseeing procurement in California, a massive logistical operation. The legislation means that we are partnered together to open the door even wider for small businesses across the state to contracting opportunities. I am so excited about that. And before we talk about this expansion, let's talk about understanding the importance of this policy. And if you could describe for our audience the sheer scale at which the state procurement market is in California. How many dollars does the state itself put into the economy every year? And help us understand the state's participation goals for small businesses and disabled veteran business enterprises. Let's start there.
First of all, thank you, Tara, for having us here today. And thank you for that wonderful introduction. So the state spends approximately $8 to $10 billion a year in goods and services. And there have been years in the past when it's been higher than that, it's been lower than that, and it was quite a bit higher than that during emergency response times. But our core is around $8 to $10 billion each year. And those dollars are available for small business and disabled veteran business enterprise participation. So that's a lot of dollars out there for opportunity. And with respect to our programs, we do have, as you mentioned earlier, the state's 25% small business participation requirement. It's now a requirement due to this piece of legislation, AB 2019, as well as a 3% disabled veteran business enterprise program across state contracting dollars annually every year. So departments are required to spend each year in those two programs. And there are some contracting programs within those two socioeconomic programs that departments are able to use to meet those two goals. For example, there is the 5% preference program if you are a small business and you can get 5% knocked off your bid to the state of California to make you more competitive. There is also a DVBE incentive program for those vendors that commit to using between 1% and 5% participation for disabled veteran business enterprises. And then the third item is the small business DVBE option contracting method, where state departments can award contracts directly to SBs or DVBEs by getting a minimum of 2 quotes, not a maximum, but a minimum of 2 quotes from these vendors, and using best value to award contracts up to $250,000 or $388,000 for public works.
Wow.
Significant.
Wow, significant. And thank you for that understanding, because I always thought that DVBE was a preference. So thank you for explaining that. It's really an incentive program.
Yes.
Awesome. So Assembly Bill 2019 really makes a connection between that big contracting machine that you just described and economic equity. And that's the phrase that's used in the legislation. So I'm going to read here briefly from the text of the statute. Quote, small businesses not only contribute significantly to the tax base of the state of California, but also account for approximately 7 million employees, or 48.8% of all employment in the state. It's therefore incumbent upon the state of California to ensure that a fair share of procurement spending be directed and dedicated to small and underserved owned businesses. So let's explore how those two things really go together, the procurement process and economic equity.
So departments have a lot of tools that are already in effect today and can be enhanced through AB 2019 and prior legislation that was passed in the prior year regarding the use of small businesses and disabled veteran business enterprises. And many of those tools are things that are outreach. So outreach can be used to really hone in on identifying those small businesses, disabled veteran business enterprises, as well as those vendors that are in the state of California that may not be certified but have the opportunity to be certified. So our women, our minority-owned, and our LGBTQ businesses can get certified if they meet the requirements. And so state departments have the ability to do targeted outreach with women and minority organizations. They have the ability to post their solicitations out on our Cali Procure system for the state of California in ways that they haven't done in the past. For example, the small business option can be posted on Cali Procure so that a host of vendors that maybe weren't looking for those solicitations in the past can now see them in the Cali Procure system, in our transparency system. There are other things like reducing the requirements in our contracts so that small businesses, DVBEs, women and minority and LGBTQ businesses can compete in ways that maybe they didn't realize they could in the past. Examples could be experience requirements. Maybe if we have, large-scale businesses that compete, maybe the insurance requirements or the experience requirements are at a level that would be commensurate with a large business. But the state has the ability to reduce some of those requirements in an effort to open up that bidding pool and allow other businesses to compete for contracts.
Awesome. That sounds like there is a lot of room to be very intentional about working with small businesses. It's about how we set the table. And if we consciously look at procurements with the small business in mind, there's tremendous opportunity.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. State departments can engage in education and training of small businesses and DVBEs that are already certified, work with minority, women-owned, and LGBTQ-owned businesses that they come across through their targeted outreach to make sure that they have a better understanding of how the state contracts and how specifically they can contract with each one of our departments. Because departments do have different types of contracts. They have different procurement methods that they may use that are specific to what they're contracting for. And then also, as state departments come across these businesses, refer them to DGS so that we can step in and help get these businesses certified.
Wonderful. Outreach. Getting the word out so folks can't say, I didn't know.
Yes.
So let's talk about the part where we get to work together. AB 2019 expands the role of my office in this process. It requires us to provide additional reporting about how the state is supporting procurement participation by small businesses, micro businesses, disabled veteran businesses, businesses owned by women, minorities, or members of the LGBT community. We're also going to get to gather information about the action plans and policies by state agency liaisons and advocates. Gosh, so many folks involved in this. So let's brainstorm real quick. How are we going to work together on this? What are you looking forward to?
So, I think for our two organizations working together to make sure that we are connecting with those liaisons, with the state departments, that we're connecting with the advocates that are in each one of those state departments. DGS works with those advocates on a regular basis to make sure that they're trained on procurement processes, on outreach processes, on education training, all of those things that are so critical for small businesses to be able to compete. And I think those are the ways that we can step in and help those entities, those state departments, those staff be the experts, be the front line when a small business comes to a department and they need help. They need help understanding the process because, unfortunately, I can say this as the Chief Procurement Officer for the state, procurement is not easy. We can find ways to make it easier, but I will never be able to tell you it is easy. So I think we need to work together, and I'm so excited that we have this opportunity to do this. We need to work together to be able to help our departments be able to do what they need to do to reach that 25% and that 3%.
Yes, and I started laughing there because I always tell small businesses state procurement is not for the faint at heart. So you got it exactly right. It is not easy. I also say it's a business decision, right? You have to really understand what you are getting yourself into and the complexities and the nuances, and you've got to study your customer. You've got to understand what they buy, how they buy, what their buying cycles are, all of the things that go into that. So to your point, procurement is not easy, but this is an opportunity for us to just swing that door so wide open. And I am excited about this opportunity to work with you. I'm excited about us getting these equity action plans done and, for us to just really kind of be able to lock arms and really help the small businesses that are pursuing their dreams here in the state of California. So
I couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, right on. Assembly Bill 2019 also calls for another really big project, which is totally new, a big thing, additive to everything that you've just described, Angela. It funds a statewide procurement and contracting disparity study and requires DGS to post the report on or before January 1st, 2025, which will be here before we know it. Tell us, what is a disparity study and how does it help the government move closer to the governor's vision?
So a disparity study is really intended to evaluate the landscape of our current contracting operations. So that study will look at who's actually getting contracts with the state of California today, who isn't getting contracts with the state of California today, and why aren't they getting those contracts? So it gives us an opportunity to talk to businesses about their challenges. Why aren't you getting contracts with the state? If you're not even trying, why aren't you trying to get contracts with the state? And it gives us an opportunity, once the study is complete and recommendations are made, to put practices in place that were recommendations from the feedback that they got from talking to these businesses. So it isn't just, making up something and saying, well, we're going to implement this. It's really founded on the feedback that we get and the real challenges that businesses are experiencing. And we're able to take a look at those and put some practices in place. And what those practices should be intended to do is to increase participation for the entirety of the vendor pool, especially including our women, our minority, LGBTQ, and our certified firms as well, because we know that we have a significant number of certified firms today, and they're not all getting state contracts. So the intent of that disparity study is really to give us an in-depth insight into what's happening and how, if there is any discrimination or really an inference of discrimination, how can we remedy that going forward?
It's a significant piece of AB 2019. It says to me that we get to gather the data that paints the real picture of what's going on. We're not going on stories, my cousin did this, my uncle did that. We'll have real hard data that shows the number of contracts that are going to the various different types of folks that you just got done describing. That seems like that's going to be one heck of a tool. Yeah. And in a diverse state like California, we should see some very interesting results.
Yeah, we are very excited about, engaging in this and seeing the results of the study.
I think one of the fundamental misunderstandings in this particular domain of state policy is the relationship between participation goals and the ban on affirmative action that was passed through Proposition 209 and is now a part of the California Constitution. I get questions about that all of the time. Now this constitutional language says that the state can't grant preferential treatment on the basis of race, sex, color, ethnicity, or national origin in the operation of public employment, public education, and public contracting. But Assembly Bill 2019 talks about increasing participation by small businesses. micro businesses, disabled veteran business enterprises, and businesses owned by women, minorities, or members of the LGBT community, and more. Walk us through this, Angela. This is where we need your expertise. How do these two legal mandates go together?
So AB 2019 really gives the state that opportunity to dive into that focused outreach. It calls out the women and minority-owned businesses, are disadvantaged business enterprises. That's the federal program that the Department of Transportation administers. It really gives us the ability to focus our outreach to those businesses in ways that perhaps we haven't done in the past. It gives us the opportunity to, again, make sure that we're doing training with these businesses to make sure that they're getting the education they need to even get their foot in the door, right? Certification. One of the ways that the bill touched on, helping these businesses is requiring DGS to work with DOT to offer that state small business certification to our disadvantaged business enterprise in the state of California, because they are two different programs. And so I think there may be some confusion that if you're certified as a disadvantaged business enterprise, which is, again, women and minority-owned businesses, that you're automatically certified as a California certified small business. That is not actually correct, because they're based on two different programs, a federal program for the disadvantaged business enterprises and a state program for our certified businesses in California. And so the bill directs us to work with those disadvantaged business enterprises to also get certified as small businesses. And we believe that many of them have that ability. And so we will be working with DOT in a partnership to make that happen. And so I think really all of those things with state departments doing that outreach, doing that education, reducing those requirements or modifying those requirements in solicitations so that businesses can compete in a more equitable way. One of the things that I think we want to be clear about is that Prop 209 hasn't gone away. Our constitutional requirement is still there. And as of today, even with the passing of AB 2019, the state does not have the ability to set individual contract goals for women and minority-owned businesses. But what we absolutely can do is look at increasing our participation of our small businesses and our DVBEs and our DBEs within the certification programs that we have, which means we are increasing business opportunities for women and minority-owned businesses.
Wow, Angela, that's a great point. And thank you for really underscoring that. While we celebrate the victory of AB 2019, we've got to remember it does not wipe out Proposition 209. That's really what I'm hearing you say, is we've got lots to celebrate over here, and the door is opening wider for the businesses that you've described here, but we still have a little bit of work to do over there. So we won't be throwing out solicitations that say minority and women only, right? We still will not be putting protected language like that or doing any type of race-based contracting. So what I'm hearing is that the integrity of the procurement system, the way that it has always been, will still be intact, right, and compliant with the Constitution. But we have an opportunity here to really outreach, engage, change language in contracts to be more inclusive, to provide opportunity. So it kind of sounds like for those in the contracting world, we're getting the best of both worlds.
That's absolutely the goal, is that we get more businesses in, we get more opportunity for them, and they start getting contracts.
So let's think out in the future. 2 years from now, a successful implementation of AB 2019 is well underway. How have we changed this picture of equity and economic mobility in California? What will be different for small businesses, in your opinion?
I think 2 years from now, we're going to have some big successes in terms of We'll have a disparity study that will have some program recommendations for us. We will have some training that we have rolled out to our small businesses, our DVBEs, our women and minority-owned vendors across the state that gets them on the path for success, for competing. And it doesn't mean that they're going to win every contract every time or even the first time. But hopefully what it means is that when we look back 2 years from now, we start to look at our numbers, our data that we're collecting now in the CalEProcure system, where vendors can go in and they can voluntarily self-identify the ownership of their business. And we're able to pull that data out and look at the increases that have happened as a result of the outreach, the education and training, the solicitation requirements, and all of these things wrapped up so that, my goal would be to hear from the small businesses about the successes that they've encountered as a result of this. I want to be able to blast that information out. I want to be able to show the state of California these businesses, got contracts as a result of what happened with AB 2019 and all of the partnerships that we had, both with our departments, with our community partners, with our vendors, with all the state departments, to be able to show people are getting contracts. The good news is out there, and we are seeing economic vitality in our communities as a result of that $8 to $10 billion worth of spend that's available every year.
Impressive. That's the word that comes to mind. Impressive. I cannot wait to see the outcomes and the impacts generated by this.
Yeah, super excited.
Yes.
I'd love to have this conversation 2 years from now. Okay, let's
Deal.
talk about what happened.
Deal.
Yes.
You're on. So, Angela, I just really want to thank you so much for giving up your time today and doing this with us. It is so incredible, the work that your office is doing. And I just greatly appreciate your commitment to seeing this incredible policy through. I greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting us to be here. DGS is so happy to be able to participate in this and in future opportunities. And we are so excited to see how all of these things that we are putting in place is going to help our small businesses in the state of California. So thank you.
Right on. So there you heard it, ladies and gentlemen, from the big dog, the woman who runs the procurement operation for the state of California, and the commitment to the governor's vision of a California for all. Thank you so much. We hope you learned something that will help your business or organization grow and thrive here in the Golden State, which is our home. Whether you're a potential partner or a business owner, we encourage you to subscribe to our monthly newsletter and follow us on social media so you can track all the deadlines and eligibility requirements for our programs as they evolve. Sign up for our newsletter on our website at calosba.ca.gov. From there, you can also download our list of new legislation, including those mentioned in this series and others that impact how small businesses operate in our state. Don't miss the other 2 segments for an even deeper understanding of how California supports its small business sector. This is Tara Lynn Gray, Director of CalOSBA, reminding you that supporting small strengthens us all.